Melancholia, which, I mean, on one level starts with the most almighty plot spoiler, if that's what you want to call it. The opening scenes of Melancholia are of a massive planet called Melancholia, drifting through the void and abyss of space, moving towards Earth to the sound of Wagnerian wailing, and then colliding with Earth, and the Earth exploding into a million bits as it smashes into the side of Melancholia. That's the beginning. So the film begins with the end of the world. Now,
it's sort of downhill from there.
Well, no, it sort of sets out its table before you, and there are some very, very haunting images. If you're familiar with Antichrist, did you see Antichrist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because we discussed it on the show. Yeah.
The slow motion stuff at the beginning of Antichrist. There's all this sort of this very, very haunting slow motion done at the beginning of Melancholia of Kirsten Dunst's character. See how I did that? Kirsten Dunst's character holding her hands up as electricity seems to come from as the planet comes over top of. Charlotte Gainsbourg running along in slow motion, holding onto a child, her feet appearing to sink into the earth. You know, like a flash scenes from around just before Melancholia, the planet, hits the earth and wipes out everything ever. We then move to the start of the action, which is a wedding, or the kind of reception from a wedding. Essentially we have two sisters, one of them played by Kirsten Dunst, one of them played by Charlotte Gainsbourg. The Kirsten Dunst character has just got married, and there is a huge big wedding reception, which is being paid for by the rich husband of Charlotte Gainsbourg, by Kiefer Sutherland. And you know, as is the manner of these things, that it's a great wedding festivity, but everything is on the brink of going horribly wrong. I mean, the film is, to some extent, Feston meets Armageddon. So everybody is drunk, but just on this side of aggression. The mother and father are estranged, and at some point Charlotte Rampling gets up and gives a speech about, wedding, marvellous, enjoy it while it lasts. Everything, job offers are actually about to break down into bitter recrimination, and at the centre of it is this idea that Kirsten Dunst's character, who suffers from depression, from melancholia, from overwhelming ennui, what she says is, what did you expect? Somehow the whole idea of this is that the wedding is setting up a great expectation of something's going to be better, but what did you expect? Because everything is always going to end badly. The thing that's going to end badly, however, is the fact that out there in space is a massive planet that's coming towards the Earth and is giving Charlotte Gainsbourg the collywobbles. Here's a clip.
Have you been going online again? Claire, you promised.
I'm afraid of that stupid planet.
That stupid planet. That wonderful planet, you mean? First it was black, now it's blue. Blocking in terrace, hiding behind the sun. Darling, this is going to be the most amazing experience we will have in our lives. It will be here in 5 days, and it is not going to hit us. Just like it didn't hit Mercury, as we knew it wouldn't. And it didn't hit Venus, as we well knew it wouldn't. And it won't hit Earth, as we know it won't. Claire, look at me. Sweetheart, you have to trust the scientists.
They say that it will hit.
No, they don't. That's not true. Not the real scientists. Now, the prophets of doom, they'll write whatever they can to attract attention. But the real scientists, all of them agree. Melancholia is just going to pass right in front of us. And it's going to be the most beautiful sight ever. I wish you would watch it through the telescope with me. Please.
No, I think I better not.
Now, the obvious thing to say is, it is a film about depression. Obviously, in the interview, just before we came on air with Kirsten Dunst, we were talking about that. The film is about depression. It is about that idea that when you're depressed, it's not that you're depressed. It feels like the whole world is depressed. And if you're right in them, and Von Trier himself has suffered from, or claims to have suffered from, because let's face it, you can't trust anything that Lars von Trier says in public as being absolutely true. Suffered from, great melancholia, great depression, kind of, great existential or romantic depression. And the idea of the film, I think, centrally, is that the Kirsten Dunst's character's depression is actually bringing Melancholia, the planet, and Melancholia, the mood, upon the Earth. There is this idea that somehow she's so depressed it is actually going to bring about the end of the world. In fact, there is one scene in it, a very sort of elegiac scene, in which she goes out and lays down naked upon the grass outside this great big mansion where they've been having the wedding, and sort of lies down as if drawing down the moon, however, in this case being the massive planet of Melancholia. So the central idea of the film is all about the way in which depression is all engulfing. Depression isn't something which is internalized. It is completely universal. And so you have the kind of the disparity between the characters. On the one hand, Charlotte Gainsbourg's character who's worried for her children, terrified that something's going to happen, it's going to be really awful. Kiefer Sutherland, who we believe to be scientific, who says, look, it's not going to happen, but actually has his own fears about it. And Kirsten Dunst says, it's the end of the world. It's all going to end. That's how it is. I know it is because I'm a depressive, and also because the earth is basically evil. There is no God. There is nothing out there. And once it comes, that's the end of everything. Clearly, thematically, this is a companion piece to Antichrist, because Antichrist has a lot of stuff in it about nature is Satan's church and sort of nihilistic theology that you're out that somehow. No, I know. Stop rolling your eyes.
Nature is Satan's.
That's a line in the film. Nature is Satan's church.
Doesn't make it any more sensible.
No, I'm not saying it does. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying it's an idea because it's a depressed idea. I mean, actually, what this and Antichrist are both ultimately about is psychosis and depression. The question, therefore, is how much a film that is about that, a film that has the gall to call itself Melancholia, that begins with the end of the world and then takes you to a wedding where everyone's actually got a lot of money but is fantastically depressed, how engaging it is. The surprising thing for me is I really like Melancholia. I thought it worked very well. I think it has a very haunting sense of impending catastrophe and doom. There's something lovely about the idea that that this isn't going to be solved by rockets going. I mean, it isn't Armageddon, let's drill some holes. Bruce Willis is nowhere to be seen. It is just about the end of everything and the obliteration of everything and the overwhelming awfulness of the void, but all done in a way that is surprisingly entertaining.
It doesn't sound like a cheery Friday night out at the movies.
It doesn't. And what I think I'm trying to express is it's surprising that when you describe the film, it just sounds like a total dirge. Yeah. But it isn't. Partly it isn't because I suppose the special effects sequences I kind of enjoy anyway. I mean, Von Trier himself, I think, is not very happy with them and doesn't like special effects. But actually, those sequences of the planet moving through it's a very sort of attention-grabbing opening, which I like very much. I like that idea about. I mean, if you look at films like On the Beach, remember On the Beach when they're just waiting for the
cliff hit.
The what?
The cliff hit.
The cliff hit.
Cliff Richard, yeah, he had a hit with On the Beach.
No, I mean the one about nuclear warfare and the fact that they're all at the end waiting waiting for the nuclear.
I think that was Cliff was reflecting that.
Well, he was in his hit. How did it go on the beach?
65.
How did
64?
How did it go?
On the Beach.
No. There is a song by the Yachts called On the Beach from the Yachts' second album, but that's probably not the one you're referring to. But I like that idea of impending doom and the different ways in which people respond to impending. I also think that one of the things there is an awful lot of Festen in this film, Thomas Vinterberg film, which is really harsh and really dark and takes that idea of the wedding being the perfect place to play out all these ideas, because the idea is everyone's going, it's great, it's marvellous, we're all friends, new life, new family, and in fact underneath there's this broiling tension and hatred, and in fact that works as quite a good sort of metaphor for life in a godless universe, because the idea is everyone's saying, yes, come on, we're doing stuff, but there's no point, because in the end you're going to get hit by this massive big planet and it's all going to be over, and that's the end of that. But I think the thing that makes it work is exactly the thing that Von Trier doesn't like about it. He thinks it's a little bit soft. He described it as being a bit like double cream. And it's almost like he's made the film in spite of himself. He's almost sort of made it by mistake. I mean, I think it's a very good companion piece to Antichrist, which I like very much. But I think it's the film that he likes less. I think he thinks it's flawed. I mean, all the stuff.
It's the Chris Rea version of On the Beach. Well, it's not a version; it's a different song. Is that involved?
No, they don't play that, which I think they should have done at the very end. They should have probably played that, but they didn't. No. Okay. In fact, you've reminded me to say actually there are a couple of wrong notes at the very end. I think he does wrong foot himself, and I think at the very end you kind of see that he can't quite wrap it up properly. And I was very interested to read in the paper today that Paul Bettany says that he's never seen Dogville because it was such a horrible experience making it. And he found, when he came on the programme, he talked about working with Lars and said he has no interest in being collaborative at all. And obviously, every time he opens his mouth in public, what he says is nonsense, whether it's all the silliness that he said in Cannes or
on the subject of that, on the silliness in Cannes, when you said he was a Nazi and all that, and you've said many times you don't
trust him yet. But I mean,
you can't trust him. But then he's given an interview. It was a GQ magazine, which he talked about his admiration for Albert Speer and for Nazi architecture. Now there comes a point where no one else would get away with it. Surely you could say, just because he's a film director doesn't mean he should be treated differently to anyone else. And if someone says, I'm a Nazi, and then in a later, I was only joking, but then later says, actually, I admire Albert Speer and I like Nazi architecture, Mel Gibson won't get away with it. So he shouldn't either.
No, I haven't read that interview, but I think when he opens his mouth, but I've interviewed him for the Cult Show, and I asked him, what he was doing at the time, in theory, was making a joke about the fact that he grew up thinking his father was Jewish, then he discovered on his mother's deathbed that his real father was German. The point is, it's like, Lars, the best thing you can do is shut up, because I think he says really infuriating things in public, and there are many things about his films that I don't like. I really can't stand Breaking the Waves. I think it's a really nasty film, and I think there is an element of his work and him which is really destructive and unpleasant. In the case of Melancholia, I actually don't think that's the case.